welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking past the simple image of a light bulb inventor. We're really trying to understand the complex firsts of Thomas Alva Edison.
He's just such a monumental figure, isn't he? You look at Edison, and you're seeing someone who didn't just invent things, he actually architected the modern world's, well, its infrastructure.
Right. It wasn't just about the inventions themselves.
No, he industrialized the whole process of inventing. He built the first real industrial research lab. A game changer.
It really was. And the sheer number of inventions is just mind-boggling. We're talking 1,093 U.S. patents, everything from electric power, sound recording, movies.
Batteries, cement, the list goes on.
So our mission here for you is to kind of get a shortcut to understanding how he did it. What was his method? That whole 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration idea.
Exactly. We've sifted through, well, a ton of history, biographies, looking at his early life, his lab methods, those huge business fights he got into, and why his legacy is still, debated today.
What really drove the Wizard of Menlo Park? Was it just raw genius? Or was it something else? Like sheer relentless work combined with maybe a ruthless business sense. Let's dive into part one, the relentless spark, his early years.
Okay, so Edison, born 1847, Milan, Ohio. But he really grew up in Port Huron, Michigan after the family moved there in '54. And the thing about his childhood education, it's pretty surprising.
Yeah, the sources say he only had a few months of actual school. His teachers apparently thought he was addled.
Can you imagine? So his mother, Nancy Elliott, she'd been a teacher herself. She just pulled him out and taught him at home. Reading, writing, arithmetic.
But it wasn't just about what she taught him, was it? It seems like his real education came from his own curiosity.
Absolutely. He was driven. He devoured books. One really important one was called A School Compendium of Natural and Experimental Philosophy. It had instructions for experiments.
So that's where he got the practical ideas from early on.
That, and it just fired up his imagination for tinkering with chemistry and electricity. Plus, his family had books by Thomas Paine, the radical thinker.
Right, the free thinker.
Yeah.
That influenced him too.
Massively. Paine's ideas about challenging authority and thinking for yourself, that stuck with Edison his whole life. He wasn't one for conforming.
So a self-taught kid, really. And he had this incredible energy, this grit, even as a child, selling things on trains.
Yeah, the news butcher job, selling newspapers, candy, even vegetables on the Grand Trunk Railway. And he wasn't just playing around.
No.
By 13, he was making $50 a week profit. That's,
Well,
that was a lot of money back in the 1850s, more than many adults earned.
Wow, $50 a week. And what did he do with it? Save it up?
Not really. He basically poured almost all of it back into his experiments, buying chemicals, wires, batteries, whatever he could get his hands on.
He was already obsessed. And he even started his own newspaper on the train.
The Grand Trunk Herald. Yep. Printed it himself, ran about 24 issues, got up to 500 subscribers. He was apparently so proud of it, he kept the first issue framed for the rest of his life.
Shows that entrepreneurial spirit was there right from the start. He understood business even then.
Definitely. Now, something else really important happens around this time. His hearing.
Yes, the deafness.
Well, started young.
Around age 12. Seems it was a combination of scarlet fever he'd had earlier and recurring ear infections. By the time he was an adult, he was profoundly deaf in one ear and had very little hearing in the other.
Which must have been incredibly difficult.
You'd think so. But Edison, well, he framed it differently. He actually said it helped him concentrate, blocked out distractions so he could focus entirely on his work.
Quite an adaptation. Fits with the image of him working those incredibly long hours later on.
It really does. And you know that famous story about him listening to music?
Biting the piano. Yeah, clamping his teeth onto the wood of a piano or a phonograph cabinet so the vibrations would go straight through his skull to his inner ear. He just found ways around it. He adapted.
Amazing. So this drive, this adaptability, it leads him to telegraphy. How did that happen?
Bit of drama, actually. In 1862, he was 15, and he saved a station agent's young child from being hit by a runaway train.
Wow, really a genuine hero moment.
Pretty much. And the grateful father repaid him by training him as a telegraph operator. That was his entry point into the world of electrical communication.
And that job was perfect for him, wasn't it? Working nights.
Exactly. 1863 to 1869, working night shifts. It meant he had hours and hours during the quiet periods to just study, read technical manuals, and crucially tinker with the telegraph equipment itself.
All the tinkering sometimes got him into trouble.
Yeah. There's a story about him getting fired from the Grand Trunk Railway. Apparently, he rigged something up to send the automatic signal while he caught some sleep, and it nearly caused a collision.
Oops. So maybe not the most reliable employee, but the inventive spark was definitely there.
Absolutely. And that led to his very first patent, June 1869, an electric vote recorder.
How did that go? Big success.
Complete failure. The politicians he showed it to basically said, thanks, but no thanks. They preferred the slow, old way of voting. It gave them more time to persuade people.
Ah, so he learned a valuable lesson there.
A huge one. He famously said after that he'd never again invent something that nobody wanted. It had to have a market.
Makes sense. So he moved to New York, kept working on telegraphy, and then came the big breakthrough, 1874, the quadruplex.
Yes, the quadruplex telegraph. This is really key. You need to understand why this was such a big deal.
Okay, break it down to us.
Before the quadruplex, a telegraph wire could basically carry one message at a time, maybe one in each direction. Edison figured out how to send 4 messages simultaneously over that single wire, 2 going each way.
Wow. So it instantly quadrupled the capacity of the existing network.
Exactly. Think about what that meant for a company like Western Union. Huge cost savings, massive increase in efficiency. They saw the value immediately.
And they paid him for it.
They paid him $30,000 for the patent.
$30,000 in 1874 money. What's that today?
We're talking well over $830,000 in today's money. Maybe more. It was a fortune.
Okay. So that was the money.
That was the seed capital. It changed everything. He wasn't just a tinkerer anymore. He had the funds to build his dream, a dedicated laboratory, an invention factory.
So with that quadruplex money, 1876, he sets up shop in Menlo Park, New Jersey. And this wasn't just any lab.
No, this was something entirely new. It's really the blueprint for the modern R&D department you see in big corporations today. His vision was organized, systematic invention, taking ideas and turning them into commercial products efficiently.
Moving from just like flashes of inspiration to a repeatable process.
Pretty much, relying on sheer volume of work, highly organized. But the work culture, well, was something else.
And
brutal might be a better word. He expected his staff, and these were brilliant engineers, mind you, to work insane hours, 18 hours a day, 6, sometimes 7 days a week, pushing them to the absolute limit.
And he took the credit for a lot of their work, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. The patents were in his name. It was his lab, his direction, but the actual perspiration, as he called it, was definitely a team effort, a very driven, often exhausted team.
The lab itself sounds fascinating. The descriptions of the inventory.
It's incredible, isn't it? By 1887, they cataloged something like 8,000 kinds of chemicals, every type of wire imaginable. But then you get the weird stuff.
Like hair.
Yeah. Hair from humans, horses, hogs, cows, goats, camels, even things like shark's teeth and tortoise shells.
Okay, why? What on earth was he doing with animal hair and shark teeth?
It shows his method perfectly. It was trial and error on an industrial scale. He wasn't trying to figure out the perfect material through theory alone. He was literally going to test everything.
Anything and everything.
Organic, inorganic, metal, fiber. If it existed, he might test it for a specific application, like a filament or a diaphragm. It shows his belief that the answer could be anywhere, you just had to test enough things.
Like finding a needle in a haystack by testing every single piece of hay.
Exactly. And this method, this relentless testing, he first turned it towards communication tech, which led to a major rivalry.
With Alexander Graham Bell.
Right. In 1876, Western Union hired Edison specifically to improve Bell's telephone, particularly the microphone. Bell's original design just wasn't very powerful. The signal was weak over long distances.
So Edison saw a commercial weakness he could fix.
Precisely. And his solution was the carbon microphone.
How did that work? What made it better?
The key was using tiny carbon granules packed between 2 metal plates. Sound waves would hit a diaphragm, press on the carbon, and carbon's electrical resistance changes a lot when you squeeze it.
Ah, the semiconductor effect.
Exactly. So faint sound waves could create big changes in the electrical current. Much stronger signal, much better for long lines.
And finding the right carbon that involved testing hundreds of materials.
He tested about 150 different things before settling on the best type of carbon, combined with parchment and tinfoil for the diaphragm. But even then, there was controversy.
Always controversy with Edison, it seems.
Pretty much. Another inventor, David Edward Hughes, claimed he had discovered the principle behind it first, the semiconductor effect in carbon. So that led to a big public fight over who deserved the credit.
But the invention that really blew people away, that wasn't about improving something else, it was totally new. The phonograph. 1877.
Oh, the phonograph. That was the one that made him a household name, the Wizard of Menlo Park. Because recording and playing back sound, it just seemed like pure magic to people back then.
What was the first version like?
Actually really simple. He recorded sound by having a needle vibrate onto a sheet of tinfoil wrapped around a spinning cylinder with grooves.
Tinfoil. Wow.
Yeah.
They sound good.
Not really. The quality was poor, and you could only play it back a few times before the tinfoil tore or wore out. But just the fact that it worked, it was astonishing. Even Joseph Henry, head of the National Academy of Sciences, called Edison the most ingenious inventor in this country.
So huge success, right? He must have rushed it to market.
Well, no, that's the weird part. He got the patent in 1878, but then he basically just put it aside for almost 10 years, the so-called lost decade of the phonograph.
Why would he do that? With such a revolutionary invention.
He got distracted. His main focus shifted to the next big thing, which was electric light. He was always chasing the bigger challenge. It wasn't until Bell's associates came out with a better phonograph using wax cylinders in the 1880s that Edison jumped back in. Competition spurred him on.
So he finally gets back to it, forms the Edison Phonograph Company in 1887, and then runs into trouble.
Big trouble. The company struggled financially almost immediately, and it led to some really nasty lawsuits with his former partners and investors, people like Ezra Gilliland and Jesse Lippincott. The sources say it tore apart his circle of wealthy friends and nearly bankrupted him.
He seemed to have trouble judging the market sometimes. Like the talking dolls idea.
Oh, the talking dolls. That was 1890. He put tiny phonographs inside dolls. It was a complete disaster.
Why? Kids didn't like them.
The main problem was the phonographs themselves were too fragile. Most of them broke during shipping. And fundamentally, Edison initially saw the phonograph as a business machine, like for dictation, replacing secretaries.
Not for entertainment?
Not at first. It was the public demand that eventually forced him to pivot towards music and entertainment. By 1900, he was selling cheaper models and churning out thousands of music recordings.
Which is just so ironic, isn't it? The man bringing recorded music to the masses was profoundly deaf.
And couldn't read music either. Yet he kept incredibly tight control over what his company recorded. Until 1915, he personally approved every single artist. Wow.
And he wouldn't even allow the artists' names on the records initially. Just the song title and Edison's name. Incredible control.
That says a lot about his personality. His ego, maybe.
Definitely speaks volumes. But okay, while all this sound revolution was happening, he was also tackling the project that would truly define him. Electric light. Now, first things first with the light bulb. We have to be really clear. Edison did not invent it from scratch.
Right. That's a common misconception. There were earlier versions.
Oh, yes. People like Humphrey Davy, Joseph Swan, they had working incandescent lamps well before Edison got seriously involved. Swan even had a carbon filament and a good vacuum months before Edison started his big push.
So if others had bulbs, why is Edison the one everyone remembers for it? What was the problem with those earlier lamps?
They just weren't practical for widespread use. They either burned out incredibly quickly, needed way too much electrical current to run, or were just far too expensive to make on a large scale. They were lab curiosities, basically.
Okay. So Edison's contribution wasn't the bulb itself, but making it work as a system. Precisely. That was his genius here. He understood you couldn't just invent a better bulb. You needed the whole package. Reliable, long-lasting bulbs, yes, but also efficient generators, a way to distribute the power safely, meters to measure usage, switches, fuses, the entire infrastructure.
He was thinking about the utility company model from the start.
Exactly. It was systems thinking. And that meant, going back to the Menlo Park method, focusing on that critical component, the filament.
The heart of the bulb. And this is where the massive trial and error came in again.
Legendary effort. His teams tested thousands of materials, carbonized cardboard, cotton thread, different woods, grasses, platinum wire, you name it.
Looking for something that would glow brightly but not burn out too fast?
Right. The breakthrough finally came with carbonized bamboo fiber. They found a specific type of Japanese bamboo that, when carbonized, could last over 1,200 hours.
1,200 hours. That was the magic number. That made it commercially viable.
That was the key. Long-lasting, relatively cheap to make. And the type of filament he chose, this high-resistance bamboo, had another huge consequence.
Which was?
It dictated the voltage standard. Because the filament had high resistance, it needed a higher voltage to work efficiently. This is why Edison chose 110 volts direct current, or DC.
The 110V standard we still basically use in North America today, that came from the bamboo filament.
Largely, yes. It was a deliberate choice, much higher voltage than some competitors were using at the time because it made the whole distribution system more economical over shorter distances. Less copper wire needed.
Okay, so he has the bulb, he has the system design, now he needs money. Big money.
And he knew where to get it, Wall Street. He formed the Edison Electric Light Company, bringing in major financiers like J.P. Morgan and the Vanderbilt family. This was crucial emerging invention with serious capital.
Where did they first showcase the whole system working together?
The first big public demonstration, really, was lighting up the steamship Columbia in 1880. It proved the system could work reliably outside the lab.
But the main event, the one that really launched the electric age, was in New York City, right? Pearl Street Station.
Right. September 4th, 1882. That's the date. Edison himself supervised the switch on at the Pearl Street Station in Lower Manhattan.
What was that moment like? Must have been incredible.
It was the birth of the modern electric utility. The system started delivering 110 volts DC to about 946 customers, lighting up over 10,000 lamps initially. But the funny thing is, the public reaction was kind of muted at first.
Well, they weren't amazed by electric light.
Well, the light itself was designed to be very similar in brightness and color to the gas lights people were already used to. It was steady, no flicker. So the sources say some people literally walked past the newly lit buildings and didn't even notice the change, or asked when the new electric lights were going to be turned on.
Huh. That's amazing. A revolution that people barely noticed initially because it worked so well.
Exactly. A seamless transition was part of the goal, but it created a new problem. How do you charge people for electricity? You can't just count the bulbs.
Right, you need a meter. How did he solve that?
With another ingenious invention, the electrochemical meter. It used zinc plates in a jar of zinc sulfate solution.
Zinc plates?
Yeah.
How did that measure electricity?
A tiny fraction of the customer's current was routed through this jar. The electricity caused zinc from the solution to plate onto one of the metal electrodes. Once a month, a guy from the electric company would come, take out the plate, and weigh it.
Weigh it? Seriously?
Seriously. The weight gain of the zinc directly corresponded to how much electricity had flowed through the meter. It was a clever, if maybe a bit cumbersome way to accurately bill customers based on usage.
That is fascinating. Measuring electricity by weight. But even with this success, he was still fighting legal battles.
Constantly. He patented something called the Edison effect in 1883, basically noticing electrons flowing from a hot filament, which is the basis of vacuum tubes. That was the first U.S. patent for what we'd now call an electronic device.
But his main light bulb patents were challenged.
Yes, specifically his method for improving the filament. A court ruled in 1883 that it was too similar to a process already documented by another inventor, William Sawyer. To avoid endless fights in Britain, he actually merged his company there with Joseph Swan's, forming Edison. The competition was fierce, global, and immediate.
Okay, so Edison has built this electric empire based on DC. But this leads us into one of the most famous and frankly ugliest episodes of his career, the War of the Currents.
Right, because his DC system had a fundamental flaw, a major limitation.
Which was the distance, right?
Exactly. Physics was the problem. DC power loses a lot of energy as heat when transmitted over wires. So Edison's system was only really effective within about a mile radius of the power plant.
Meaning he could only really serve dense urban areas like downtown Manhattan. Not suburbs, not small towns.
Precisely. It was a geographical bottleneck. And that opened the door for his rivals, particularly George Westinghouse.
Westinghouse championed alternating current, AC. Why was AC different?
AC had a killer advantage, the transformer. You could generate AC at a very high voltage, send it long distances over thinner, cheaper wires with much less power loss, and then use a transformer to step down the voltage safely for use in homes and factories.
So AC could reach places DC just couldn't economically. It solved the distribution problem.
Completely. It opened up the entire country to electrification, not just the big cities.
Now, Edison's reaction to this wasn't exactly welcoming, was it?
No. He dug in his heels. He became incredibly dogmatic about DC. Part of it was genuine safety concerns. He thought the high voltages used for AC transmission were inherently dangerous and would kill people, damaging the public's trust in electricity.
But part of it was protecting his own massive investment in DC technology.
Oh, absolutely. He had millions invested in DC infrastructure, so he went on the attack personally. He famously declared that Westinghouse would kill a customer within 6 months.
And this wasn't just talk. He launched a full-on propaganda campaign.
A really nasty one. He teamed up with a guy named Harold P. Brown. They started staging public demonstrations where they would electrocute animals, dogs, cats, even horses and cattle using AC power.
Just to scare people. To show AC was deadly.
Exactly. It was pure fear-mongering, designed to associate Westinghouse's AC technology with death in the public mind.
And it got even darker with the invention of the electric chair.
This is probably the low point. Edison and his allies secretly worked with New York state authorities and with Westinghouse's main competitor, Thomson-Houston, to make sure the first electric chair used a Westinghouse AC generator.
So they deliberately linked AC to capital punishment.
The goal was to permanently taint AC, to make people think of it as the executioner's current. It was incredibly cynical.
Did the scare tactics work? Did it stop AC?
Not in the long run. The technical and economic advantages of AC were just too great. By the end of 1887, Westinghouse and Thomson-Houston were building AC stations rapidly, seriously challenging Edison's dominance. He was losing the war.
And the money men noticed. J.P. Morgan again.
J.P. Morgan stepped in. He saw this endless fighting was just hurting the bottom line. So in 1892, he engineered a massive merger. Edison General Electric was forced to combine with its main rival, Thomson-Houston,
Creating
General Electric, GE, the company we still know today.
Wow. But Edison didn't come out on top of that deal, did he?
No. Morgan put the Thomson-Houston leadership in charge of the new company. Edison was essentially pushed out of the company that bore his name. He was incredibly bitter about it, felt his patents had been stolen by the competition.
So ousted from the electric light industry he basically created, what did he do next? He didn't just retire.
Oh, no. Edison never stopped. He immediately pivoted. He threw his energy and a lot of his remaining money into a completely different field. Iron ore mining.
Iron ore. Why?
He bought vast tracts of land in Ogdensburg, New Jersey, that had low-grade iron ore. His plan was to use technology, massive automation, to make it profitable.
So more inventing, but applied to mining.
Exactly. He designed this incredible, highly automated plant. Giant 70-ton crushers, the biggest steam shovel in the country at the time, huge electromagnets, 480 of them to separate the iron particles. He wanted a process where machines did almost everything.
Sounds ambitious. Did it work?
Technically, it was amazing. Commercially, it was a disaster. The process was too expensive, the ore quality was too low, and then the financial panic of 1893 hit. The mine hemorrhaged money. It nearly bankrupted him again.
Saved by his father-in-law's loan, apparently. But he didn't give up. He used the mining equipment for something else.
He pivoted again, took the crushing and conveyor equipment from the failed mine, and started the Edison Portland Cement Company in 1899.
Cement. From iron ore to cement.
Seems random, but he saw an opportunity. And again, he innovated. He developed these huge 150-foot-long rotating kilns. They were much more efficient than existing kilns, saved fuel, saved labor.
He even tried to build houses out of cement, didn't he?
Yeah, that was a wild idea around 1901. He wanted to cast entire 3-story houses in a single pour using giant molds. Cheap, durable housing. But the public just wasn't interested. It never took off.
Always pushing boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Now, alongside all this, he was also getting into moving pictures.
Right. Starting in the late 1880s, working closely with an employee named W.K.L. Dixon, Edison's initial vision was to do for the eye what the phonograph does for the ear.
So movies with sound right from the start.
That was the ultimate goal, yes. The kinetophonograph synchronized picture and sound. They actually got it working in the lab as early as 1890, but getting the sync reliable enough to sell commercially was just too difficult back then, so they shelved the sound part for a while.
And focused on silent pictures first. The kinetoscope.
Exactly. The kinetoscope was launched in 1891. It was that peep show-style machine you'd find in penny arcades. One person at a time looks in.
His studio made a lot of early films.
Nearly 1,200 films, including famous ones like The Great Train Robbery from 1903.
Yeah.
But there's another dark footnote here related to the AC/DC wars.
Oh no, what now?
In 1903, his film company produced a short film called Electrocuting an Elephant.
Electrocuting an elephant?
Yes, Topsy, a circus elephant deemed dangerous. They filmed her electrocution using AC current supplied by the local power company. It was another very public piece of anti-AC propaganda, a grim reminder of that rivalry.
That's disturbing. On a slightly brighter note, he did accidentally help preserve film history.
Kind of ironically, yes. To copyright his films, he had to deposit copies with the Library of Congress. But film stock wasn't accepted yet, so they printed each frame onto long strips of photographic paper.
Paper prints.
Yes, and it turns out those paper prints survived much better over time than many of the original nitrate films, which were flammable and decomposed. So bizarrely, his attempt to protect his copyright ended up preserving a lot of early cinema for us. So as we look towards Edison's later life, we should probably touch on the man himself, his personal life. The sources suggest the lab always came first.
Yeah, family life seems to have taken a backseat. His first wife, Mary Stilwell, married in 1871. They had 3 kids, Dot, Dash, and William. Cute nicknames.
Cute nicknames, but by most accounts, he was pretty neglectful. Mary died quite young, only 29, in 1884. The cause isn't totally clear. Maybe a brain tumor, maybe complications from morphine, which was prescribed pretty freely back then.
And the kids had issues too, particularly Thomas Jr., Dash.
Oh, Thomas Jr. was a real headache for his father. He kept trying to cash in on the famous name, selling dodgy products advertised as the latest Edison discovery, things that had nothing to do with his father.
So Edison had to.
He actually had to sue his own son to get him to stop. Eventually, he ended up just paying Thomas Jr. an allowance on the condition he wouldn't use the Edison name for business scams. Pretty sad, really.
He remarried, though, Mina Miller, in 1886.
Yes, Mina. Much younger, from a wealthy background, very socially adept, and a devout Methodist. She really brought order to his chaotic life, managed the household, looked after his health.
Nikola Tesla apparently said she saved Edison from dying young due to sheer neglect.
That's the quote. She was definitely a stabilizing force, though Edison was still controlling. Apparently, he insisted on making his own fireworks for the 4th of July and used to add a bit of TNT for extra bang.
TNT.
Seriously.
The deaf inventor enjoying the loud explosions.
Seems fitting somehow, doesn't it? He loved the spectacle.
Now, his later scientific work, he got into X-rays.
He did. Right after Röntgen discovered them in 1895, Edison was fascinated. His lab quickly developed a practical fluoroscope, the kind of X-ray viewing screen still used in principle today.
But he stopped working on it, didn't he? Why?
Because of a tragedy. He didn't realize how dangerous the radiation was. One of his key assistants, Clarence Daly, who worked extensively with the X-ray tubes, developed horrific radiation burns and eventually died from cancer in 1903. He was one of the first martyrs of the atomic age.
How did Edison react?
He was deeply affected. He completely abandoned all X-ray research, famously saying, "Don't talk to me about X-rays, I'm afraid of them."
Understandable. He also spent a huge amount of effort on batteries later in his career, right? For electric cars.
Yes, the nickel-iron alkaline battery. He saw the potential for electric vehicles early on and wanted a better, more durable battery than the existing lead-acid ones.
And this was another massive research project.
Absolutely monumental. Classic Edison. His team tested something like 10,000 different combinations of materials for the electrodes and electrolyte. 10,000.
Did it work? Did he crack it?
He did eventually develop a very robust, long-lasting alkaline battery. It was technically superior in many ways. His friend Henry Ford was a big believer, even loaned him over $1 million for the project.
What?
But it took too long. By the time the battery was really ready for mass production, around 1910, gasoline-powered cars, especially Ford's own Model T, had already captured the market. The electric car moment had passed, for the time being. Bad timing.
He also got involved in World War I efforts.
He did. He headed up the Naval Consulting Board, but he was very clear, consistent with his stated pacifism, that he would only work on defensive technologies. He often said he was proud he never invented weapons to kill.
Though he did profit from the war indirectly.
Oh, hugely. When the war cut off chemical imports from Germany, Edison's companies quickly stepped in to produce vital things like phenol, used for explosives but also plastics, and aniline dyes. He started production incredibly fast, just a month after the war began in Europe.
And then sold some surplus phenol back to Bayer, who shipped it to Germany.
That's the irony of wartime commerce, isn't it? Business is business.
That need for domestic supply chains seems to have driven his very last big project, too, finding a source of rubber in America.
Right. Around 1915, he got worried about U.S. dependence on foreign rubber, especially from Asia, so he launched another massive search.
Testing plants.
Thousands of them. About 17,000 different plant samples. looking for one that could produce latex suitable for rubber right here in the U.S.
Did he find one?
He eventually settled on a type of goldenrod Leavenworth's goldenrod, which showed some promise. He was working on that right up until the end. Still experimenting, still testing.
What about his broader philosophy, his views on religion?
He called himself a free thinker, very much in the vein of Thomas Paine. He explicitly rejected traditional religious dogma, the idea of a personal god of the theologians. But he did seem to believe in some kind of supreme intelligence behind the universe, which he often just called nature.
And in his final years, he became a kind of public icon, didn't he? Those camping trips.
Yeah, the famous vagabonds trips. Every year, Edison, Henry Ford, Harvey Firestone, sometimes John Burroughs, the naturalist, would go motor camping together. It was partly genuine friendship, but also fantastic publicity for all of them. Icons of American industry roughing it together.
He stayed involved with technology right near the end, too.
Amazingly, yes. In September 1930, just over a year before he died, even though he was quite frail, he was there at the controls for the departure of the first electric commuter train service from Hoboken, New Jersey, running on DC power, naturally, still championing his system.
When did he finally pass away?
He died on October 18th, 1931, at his home in West Orange, New Jersey. He was 84, complications from diabetes.
And there's that strange final detail, the test tube.
Ah, yes. His son Charles, apparently at the request of Henry Ford, had a test tube held near his father's mouth as he passed away, supposedly to capture his last breath. It's a bit macabre, but that test tube is now sealed and on display at the Henry Ford Museum. A weird final artifact. Hashtag outro. So when you pull it all together, this deep dive into Edison, his real genius maybe wasn't just one invention. It was systematizing invention itself.
Yeah.
That relentless trial and error combined with, let's be honest, aggressive business tactics and a real flair for publicity.
He really did shape so much of the modern world we live in. Electric light, recorded sound, movies, the whole idea of an R&D lab.
Yeah.
It's an incredible legacy.
But it wasn't always pretty. The competition was brutal. He overworked his staff, took credit, engaged in that nasty propaganda during the War of the Currents. It's complex.
We set out trying to understand his method, his knowledge source. And I think what we found is that the how is almost more important than the what. How he normalized this massive industrial approach to innovation. That's the template.
It really is. High pressure, big investment, legal battles. That's the model for a lot of tech development even today.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. We often picture Edison as this lone genius, maybe using his deafness to focus. But when you look at the reality of the huge teams, the internal competition he fostered, the public battles, what's more important for innovation like his?
Is it the single visionary leader? Or is it the whole intense, high-stakes, sometimes ruthless system they build around them?
Did Edison achieve all this despite his flaws, his controlling nature? Or were those very traits part of the engine that drove those 1,093 patents into existence? Something to think about next time you flick on a light switch.